Oh, looks like we have an invitation. Let's see what this is about. We were invited to a cookout. There's going to be food, entertainment, and of course, an overall great time. But will there actually be a great time? But will the host actually make it a great time? Today, we're going in and ranking all 33 Terraria bosses based on how well they could host a cookout. Now, today's criteria for ranking them is going to be this: looks, food and food quality, entertainment, service, atmosphere, ambiance, and whether the guests would survive. Now, as always, let's hop right in and see who is a cookout connoisseur and who is a cookout catastrophe. Alright, so welcome here. We are going to start off pretty much in chronological order of where they appear. We're going to go pre-hard mode, then we're going to go to event bosses, and then we're going to go to hard mode bosses. So starting off, of course, we have King Slime. A big old blue slime with a ninja inside and a crown on his head. Now, King Slime does have servants, and so therefore they could be like busser slimes who bring out trays of food and stuff like that. If they need to cook, if King Slime needs to cook, or they need a utensil or something like that, they would have to call someone over who then has to put like a fork or tongs inside the slime. And then I feel like it's just going to get absorbed by King Slime. Same way with the ninja. And of course, King Slime causes all the slime rain to fall pretty much at all times, or basically when angered. So King Slime either needs to be appeased at all times, no critiques of his. You can't say anything negative about the food. Or you're going to have to bring all sorts of foods and stuff inside once the food is somehow cooked. But then again, a cookout is always outdoors, so that's not a good thing. So King Slime doesn't handle criticism well, and that's going to make him pretty low on the tier because he's not going to provide very good entertainment service, and whether the guests would survive or not. The food quality is also going to be questionable, obviously, because there's going to be slime all over it no matter what. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start off, we're going to put King Slime into the D tier. Moving up, we have the Eye of Cthulhu, where it's just a big old eyeball severed from Cthulhu, apparently. They have giant nerve endings that they could use as utensils, but it may be too sensitive for the eye to pick up anything with said tendrils, because they're connected to whatever. They're just big old nerve endings. Even if the food was somehow prepared and served correctly, there's the presence of a giant eyeball always just staring you down and observing you at all times. And then, the Eye of Cthulhu has many eyeballs, so they're observing you as well. Like, pretty much every bite you're going to take, you're going to see some eyeball just staring at you. If made angry, he loses the cornea in the mouth hole with contorted fangs appear. Maybe it wants to try some of his own cooking, or maybe make you a part of the cookout. Now, would I trust the Eye of Cthulhu greater than King Slime to make a decent cookout? I think so. I would put him a tier above. So we're going to go ahead and throw him into the C tier. Would you survive? It's questionable again. You may be able to critique and then just have a giant eyeball floating and staring at you. If you can, maybe you'll get out of that. Hopefully you'll survive. Something along those lines. Moving on, we have the Eater of Worlds, where it's a big old giant worm boss comprised of individually living segments stringed together. Literally, the Eater of Worlds is made up of all these rotten chunks, and they're always shooting vile around and burrowing all over the place. So not only would the cookout be ruined due to, the vile and the giant rotten chunks flying around and falling off him and all that stuff, but the lawn and the neighbors' lawns from the Eater trying to tunnel around while cooking and entertaining guests would just, it'd be a nightmare. You'd have all these holes everywhere. Guests could easily fall in these holes, and then they're huge holes. Who knows how far or deep they go. You might have some sort of incident where you're going to be showing up on the news saying that, oh, it's a big old sinkhole. No, it turns out it was the Eater of Worlds flying around and burrowing everywhere. Would I trust the Eater of Worlds to produce anything of any quality in terms of entertainment or food or service or atmosphere or ambiance? No. So the Eater of Worlds is going to be the first up on the tier list to make it all the way down to the Cookout Catastrophe F tier. So up next we have the Brain of Cthulhu, which it's just, literally a big giant brain with big old creepers for servants. The creepers can act in similar fashion to other subordinates mentioned earlier, so they can bust around and do stuff like that. And the brain can use teleportation and probably telekinesis to flip over and deliver burger patties at an astounding rate. He could be on the other side of the lawn and you'll just see a spatula just float, turn a patty over and kind of press it down, speed up the cooking process a little. The brain could also probably read your mind, which is a good or bad thing. They could tell you if you're hungry or thirsty, and also what you think of the food. You could give it your opinion without speaking a single word. Is the brain going to take that opinion well? Maybe. It depends. Depends how bad you think the food is or how good you think the food is. It could also use the said mind reading abilities probably to ask you what condiments, spices, or cheeses you want on your food, or for that when it's cooking. So like, oh man, I could really use a piece of mild cheddar on my next burger, and then you're just going to see a mild cheddar just fly up and then just slowly make it on top of a burger patty. Now, if eye contact is needed, if you need eye contact to look at them or something like that, the brain can split open and reveal its eye to stare at you and your loved ones. Is that a good or bad thing? Again, it's up to interpretation. I feel like I would trust the brain out of all of the other previous entrants to make a semi-decent cookout. So he's not going to make it all the way to the S tier, but the brain of Cthulhu is going to make it to the A tier. So up next we have the queen bee, a giant queen bee with the hexagonal honeycomb at her lower section. Now, the plus of the queen bee is she can obviously make like honey grilled foods, make a nice honey baked ham or something like that if she wants. And she does have a built-in cooling system for you and the other guests, as her giant wings could be used as giant fans, so that she has that going for her. You do not want to attend this cookout if you're allergic to pollen or flowers or anything outdoors in general, because her backyard is going to be full of anything and everything to spread pollen around. Now, she does deal poison, so you do have to be somewhat careful around the food, but she also is non-aggressive unless her larva or abomination is used. So I feel like she's going to be more on the friendly side. So that she has that going for her. I feel like you'd survive as long as you don't do something just absolutely insane. Food and food quality would be good. She'd have some entertainment service going around. Probably okay atmosphere, again, if you're not allergic to anything. We're going to put her a little bit below the brain of Cthulhu, I feel like, because she's going to go into the B tier. Get it? Up next, we have Skeletron, the one with the skull and the arms and the hands and whatnot. Skeletron does not spawn in unless the old man is slain, so Skeletron would be better suited for a more cult-themed cookout. Now, Skeletron can operate a grill better than previous entrants because he has not one, but 2 full hands. Therefore, he can have like a spatula in one hand and a meat fork in the other. Now, Skeletron would be a great conversation piece, as you could say like plenty of skeleton or bone puns around or at him. So one of the negative aspects though is he is just bone and therefore he's like unable to taste. So Skeletron may not know when there is too many or too little spices, or when ingredients have gone bad, or how long he's cooked it besides, feel and stuff like that. That's the negative side. We're gonna follow up with Queen Bee and we're gonna place Skeletron into the B tier. Up next, we have our first crossover character. We have Deerclops from the game Don't Starve Together. I feel like Deerclops is just going to have a big old stinky fur coat, and all it wants to do is attack. Maybe won't be able to understand the community surrounding a cookout. May just want to beat them up or something like that. Now, on this channel, we always give it the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to go ahead and give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to leave Deerclops out of F tier and place it into the E tier. Purely because there may be an opportunity to like teach Deerclops like cooking and stuff like that, or teach it how to grill. Maybe it could host. I very seriously doubt it. That's why it's going to go that low. Last up on the pre-hard mode bosses, we have the legend, the Wall of Flesh, where we have meat. Tons and tons of meat. Now, is this meat already cooked? It is in hell, so the meat on the wall is probably like shoe leather, and therefore a prime choice for all my well-done enjoyers out there. Now, the Wall of Flesh, again, probably has a ton of experience with cooking said meat, so I feel like the Wall of Flesh would be able to tell when the meat is at rare, medium well, etc., that kind of thing. As long as we do not threaten the world and are attending, it would definitely throw a barbecue-themed cookout. So as long as we attend the barbecue and are gracious guests, I feel like it'd be an okay experience. With all that being said, I would trust the Wall of Flesh to throw a pretty decent cookout. I'm going to go ahead and throw the Wall of Flesh into the A tier. Moving on, we have these special bosses, or event bosses, if you will. We're going to start it off with the Dungeon Defenders 2 crossover event. We're going to go with the Dark Mage, where, again, it's a sorcerer that comes from Dungeon Defenders 2. It just flies around on some magic carpet. Maybe, like, the Dark Mage can perhaps fly around and see who needs, like, refreshments and such. They get a kind of a bird's eye view thing going on. So the Dark Mage is unable to land onto the ground though, and then therefore is like unable to shake hands or hug the guests that arrive or depart, unless they like reach up or somehow get on the carpet itself. But I feel like if you're shaking hands or hugging something above you, they're trying to flex on you with some sort of status symbol kind of thing. And again, the Dark Mage is able to summon minions from the Old One's army. So would it host a cookout? Yes. Would it be a memorable one? The only thing you may remember is the negative aspects of it, but again, would the food be okay? Probably. Stuff like that would make it an okay cookout, so we're going to go ahead and throw the Dark Mage into the C tier. Following up with the Old One's Army event, we have the Ogre, who's simply just a big ol' ogre with a large wooden club who is able to hurl a ball of ogre spit at a player, so that's convincing. He is a large guy, so who I'd feel like would have a spatula in one hand and a Modelo in another. So I think the Ogre seems plenty capable of hosting one mean cookout, definitely a barbecue cookout. He would always be focused on the cooking or grilling though, I feel like, and anything and everything people want. But then again, due to that, the Ogre may not be able to speak much to the guests since he's so entranced by cooking. He may just be like, "Hur." Now, Ogre would definitely be a quiet cook that people would leave and say something along the lines of, "Oh man, did you try his beef ribs? I really, really got to get his recipe." Ogre's food is going to be exceptional. Probably a pretty good cookout, I feel like. But the negative aspect, again, is that Ogre would probably not be a talkative one for hosting, would probably not like shake hands or hug people too much. So we're gonna go ahead and move him not all the way to the S tier, but we're gonna move the Ogre to the A tier. Now we have the final boss of the Old One's Army event. We have Betsy the Dragon. Would a dragon be able to perform tasks such as entertainment or cooking? Maybe. She can at least command and lead an army, so she has some form of knowledge on how to communicate at least. She, like other entrants, has the ability to breathe fire and therefore can at least sear meats, but may not be able to control it well, so it's going to be nice, well, and crispy. Betsy, I feel like is going to be, at least of the Old One's Armies event, is going to be the worst of the three in terms of hosting a cookout, because it's just a big old dragon, not really a humanoid in that kind of regard. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put Betsy into the D tier. Moving on, we have the Flying Dutchman, where the Flying Dutchman is literally just a big old giant wooden pirate ship. Of course, in lore, the Dutchman is a ghost ship that is unable to port at any docks and is forever doomed to sail the seven seas. Now, it does have some oars on both sides of it, which maybe you can rig up some sort of system to be used for something along the lines of like a wooden pizza stove. You know, they can throw pizzas in and bring them out. How would the Dutchman prepare said pizzas before throwing them in? This is what's hard to answer. Maybe you could buy some pre-made ones, but then again, the pre-mades aren't near as good as the homemade ones, so that's going to lower them a little bit on the food aspect. All right, how are you going to talk to a big old flying ship? I have no idea. Now, I do have a feeling that the Dutchman is at least able to poorly cook up a pizza somehow. Again, is otherwise unable to communicate or provide any real substance while hosting. So the Flying Dutchman can at least attempt something. So we're going to move it up a couple above the F tier. We're going to go ahead and follow up Betsy. And we're going to throw the Dutchman into the D tier. Now we have Morning Wood, where they're a living jack-o'-lantern with an innuendo I'm not really a fan of. I feel like I could say some cornball Halloween lines, such as like, "Would you like a trick or treat?" And would make pretty much any and all guests roll their eyes and lose their appetite saying that, just like, ugh. Would it try to share some of its quote-unquote secret sap? Yes. Would it ruin most of, if not all, the people's meals with quote-unquote that secret sap? Yes. Now, that's just disgusting, Morning Wood. Would you provide food at least? Yes. Would I not want to try it? Yes. So, as long as it's providing something, I guess we can move it above the F tier. So we're going to put Morning Wood into the E tier. They're just a disgusting freak, and we're just going to move on. Now, following along with the Halloween theme, we have Pumpkin, where Pumpkin looks like they would be a hibachi chef in a past life. Maybe even the king of hibachi. He can emote by rotating his pumpkin head around. So say something like, say Stacy comes over to Pumpkin and says a rumor about Jennifer. Pumpkin can literally rotate his entire head and pog at her. Now, I feel like many would love Pumpkin for his food and his ability to express at minimum facial expressions. Maybe something can come out of that. I feel like the food would be excellent. I feel like he would host one mean Halloween-themed party that people can dress up as and attend. Pumpkin deserves the highest recognition of making it all the way to the S tier. So for the wintertime fans out there, we first up on this theme have Everscream, a big old giant evergreen Christmas tree that likes to throw pine needles and ornaments all around. Maybe Everscream is capable of, it's going to be called self-mutilation. Maybe Everscream could tear off pieces of wood for some slow cooking. But now the problem with that is Everscream is an evergreen. Evergreen wood contains saps that are flammable and they produce a bad odor. They are not recommended at all for any sort of cooking. If Everscream were to use said woods in the fire, I feel like the guests are going to leave in droves. I feel like Everscream is unable to really produce any food. It's just going to stomp around, not really talk to the guests, threaten their lives, that kind of thing. So Everscream is going to go to the lowest tier of F tier. Following up with the Christmas wintertime theme, we have a giant Santa-like robot for the Christmas enthusiasts out there. We have Santa NK1. Now, Santa NK1 strikes me as the type of guy / robot thing who only knows how to cook something in terms of efficiency over taste. What is more efficient in terms of time than microwaving frozen foods and dispensing them to the guests? In terms of food, at least Santa NK1 is able to produce something, but then again, it's going to be all frozen foods, so it's going to be bland in flavor and taste and all that kind of thing. He wouldn't understand if you said, like, this is the worst food ever, but at least you gave me something. It's a giant robot. Like, they aren't capable of tasting anything. Now, Robo Saint Nick would also somehow Robo Saint tick off the guests when they have to taste his foods. Would Santa NK1 be a good host? No. Is Santa NK1 capable, at least, of being a host? Yes. Santa NK1's going to go one tier above Everscream. We're going to place him into the E tier. Moving on, we have the final mini-boss of the Frost Moon event. We have the Ice Queen. Now, she would 1000% have a dessert-themed quote-unquote cookout. Is providing desserts really a cookout? I'm not too sure. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say yes, because Ice Queen would provide foods such as ice cream, popsicles, cheesecakes, cold stuff, that kind of thing. Now, talking to her would prove she is ice cold. You know, she'd be one of those monotone people that doesn't display any form of emotion, but at least would talk to you maybe in single words or something like that. Therefore, most, but not all, wink wink, people would not care for her. Now, she can at least appear as like some sort of centerpiece of the cookout. You know, she takes the place of an ice sculpture just dead center. So she's got some atmosphere and ambiance going on for her. Again, it's only going to be desserts and stuff like that for the cookout. They'll probably be pretty tasty at least. There'd be a decent ambiance, stuff like that. So Ice Queen can move all the way to the B tier. Moving on, we have the Martian Saucer, where they would provide all-time classic foods such as dehydrated and decompressed Glorpian fruit, 15% carbon enhanced. Now, let's listen to some audio of actually engaging in conversation with the Martian Saucer. So the Martian Saucer is hard to communicate with. The food's going to be pretty unsavory, and the decorations are going to be lackluster. At least you get a giant floating spaceship, so it has something running for it. Maybe you get to fly in the saucer, but chances are, if you go inside the saucer, you are not making it home. Martian Saucer, again, has the issue of it can provide something at least, but it's going to be pretty low quality. Martian Saucer is going to go into the E tier. Up next, we have the 4 pillars, the Solar Nebula, Vortex, and Stardust pillars. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to throw Nebula, Vortex, and Stardust into the F tiers. Solar, maybe it could produce something. Again, it's flaming. It could cook food, but oh man, it's going to be hard to eat. It's going to be burned to crap, but at least it can do something. It's going to go into the E tier. Up next, we have Akram, where they're a console exclusive. So therefore, Akram can only use a controller to cook. So therefore, it's not going to be as precise in terms of cooking and moving and articulating their appendages, I want to say limbs. And Akram was even removed in all maintained versions of Terraria. So therefore, Akram is going to go all the way to the removed tier. Up next, we have Lepus, where they are some sort of evil Easter Bunny incarnate. Lepus would only provide candies as food, as like any Easter Bunny would. He himself would probably be vegetarian. So if he were to prepare, you know, some sort of other food besides just handing people candies, do not expect anything meat related. Some people like that, some people don't. Now there are vegetarian substitutes, but I know that this would throw off some guests at least. He might be kind, he might just eat you. It is the guest's choice on whether they take that risk. Now, Lepus at least has the Diseaster bunnies and more Lepuses on hands, so he does have servants to help him throughout the day. It's going to be one of those mid-tier kind of cookouts. We're going to go ahead and throw Lepus into the C tier. Lastly, on our special/event bosses, we have Turkor the Ungrateful. I feel like this is going to be one of the more interesting bosses. So we have a succulent Thanksgiving feast laid out before us on this big old platter. But we also have a giant sentient turkey head, like, guarding everything. Would the guests somehow convince Turkor to sacrifice his head for the cookout? Would they somehow distract him and gather food while he's distracted? Or would he feel pain or anything when food is removed from the plate and or turkey body? Or do they have to become more sinister with their approach and take out the head to enjoy the bountiful harvest on the platter? All of the foods are clearly going to be tasty. It's going to be a very well-made Thanksgiving dinner. It's going to have a great Thanksgiving atmosphere, family and friends gathered around at the cookout. But the downside is the head is defending all of it. And I feel like the head is not going to give it up so easily. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to throw Turkor. Again, would be S tier, but it has the giant head floating around defending everything. So we're going to move it down into the A tier. All right, last up on the list, we have all of the hard mode bosses. So this is post defeating the Wall of Flesh. First up, we're going to have the Queen Slime. Queen Slime is obviously just a king slime, except covered in a more pink slime and contains a colorful crystal and not the ninja. Now, she does have more servants than that of the king slime. You know, she has the crystal slimes, heavenly slimes, and bouncy slimes. If she uses a charcoal grill, she could at least fan the charcoals and get a more even heat. Sorry, Hank Hill. She has a built-in cooling system if it's a hot day with those wings. She is better suited to at least host a cookout in comparison to that of the king slime. So she's going to go a tier above into the C tier. Moving on, we have two whole eyeballs where we have the twins. With Retinazer's laser, we were able to see some like pretty cool party tricks that could bedazzle any guests. Could be used to start a grill or something like that if needed. With Spasmatism's cursed flames, the question arises if they should cook with the green flames. Would the flames somehow season the food, or would the green flames taint any food that is placed on the grill? Again, benefit of the doubt, we're going to say it seasons. So therefore, the twins are going to have a pretty good cookout. They can entertain guests. Can you talk to them? No. Again, you have two eyeballs staring at you. So that's kind of a negative side of it for most people. But it's going to be, it'll be an okay cookout if the twins are hosting. So we're going to go ahead and throw the twins into the B tier. Now, moving on, we have the Destroyer, where it's basically going to be the same as the Eater of Worlds, except at least the Destroyer is robotic compared to big old rotting worm. Maybe you can somehow install a grill inside of the Destroyer. Otherwise, this big mechanical worm suffers the same fate as the Eater of Worlds. Again, the Destroyer is at least not rotting or anything, so it has something going for it. Otherwise, it seems pretty incapable, but it can at least produce something. So we're going to go ahead and throw the Destroyer into the E tier. Up next, we have Skeletron Prime, where we have 1, 2, 3, count them, 4 entirely useful appendages that are attached to an entirely useful mechanical head. The laser can control the temperature of the cooking. The vise can hold and dispense any foods. The saw can be used to saw anything, such as a turkey or ham. And the cannon can be loaded with, like, fireworks to make the cookout more festive and exciting. I feel like Skeletron is mentally and physically capable of cooking up a perfect burger, hot dog, or anything that comes to mind. I feel like it'd somehow be able to entertain the guests. You know, it's a giant floating robot head with 4 awesome attachments. Now, would it attack you? Maybe. Benefit of the doubt, we're going to say it's not. So, Skeletron Prime deserves, I feel like, the highest honor of being second to make it into the S tier. So up next we have Mechdusa, where we have an amalgamation of the previous 3 entrants. We have to ask the question of, are there too many cooks? Would Mechdusa be better or worse than the individual previous entrants? I feel like Mechdusa is pretty much the same as Skeletron Prime. Skeletron Prime is a little better suited for a cookout, but then again, Mechdusa is going to more or less be the same. We're not going to put Mechdusa into the S tier. We're going to move Mechdusa into the A tier. So up next we have the legend itself. We have Plantera. Now, Plantera is going to definitely provide an unlimited supply of most seasonings and vegetables or fruits, being a giant plant. So I feel like Plantera would be able to provide the best dang cantaloupe or watermelon people have ever eaten. So it has that running for it. Would it try and kill you? Yes. So that's not going to move it into the S tier. Would there be some sort of unknown crazy disease that's never heard of inside the food? Maybe. But again, it's Plantera. We got to give Plantera the chance, people. So Plantera is going to be a pretty good cookout host, in my opinion. We're going to throw Plantera into the A tier. Up next, we have the Golem, where at least the Golem could do something like clay cooking, but Golem would purely defend the food from anyone and everyone. I feel like the Golem is just going to sit in place and not do anything while people are trying to, ask Golem, like, where's the food? Where's the entertainment? Where's anything? Why did we come here? Maybe Golem could somehow do something. I'm going to doubt it pretty heavily. But then again, we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I keep saying this. We're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. We're going to put the Golem into the D tier. Up next, we have Duke Fishron, where we have a flying Pigron abomination who can summon Sharknadoes at will. Now, of course, the Sharknadoes seem like a bad idea if used close enough to the guests due to the biting and the winds and such. Same thing with his detonating bubbles. Now, Duke Fishron would make okay sushi at least. Would that be good for all guests? I don't know. Maybe if he puts it on the card. But then again, Duke Fishron seems like a pretty bad host, in my opinion. At least he can do something. So Duke Fishron is going to go into the E tier. Up next, we have the Empress of Light, where she wants to scrub like the land of any and all impurities. So I feel like that's perfect for being meticulous and thorough when doing stuff like entertaining guests or making sure that everything to the last minute detail is correct. Now, she would make something like the steak of the Empress is like her main entree. She has that. She can also use her Rays of Light for nighttime cookouts or to warm up the place if it's like a wintertime cookout. She has her Ethereal Lances, which would be perfect. Let me tell you, perfect for using to serve corn on the cob with. Now, Empress of Light would be one of those hosts that would be able to talk to anyone and everyone, giving some sort of divine intervention, divine chat with people. So she has that going for her. And I think she'd be able to recite recipes or grilling techniques perfectly. She'd be a fantastic cook. She'd be a fantastic host. So therefore, I feel like Empress of Light deserves the high honor of making it all the way to the S tier. So up next, we have the Lunatic Cultist, where it's wizard time! Fireball! They are definitely a hibachi chef, so they're a performer at least. The Cultist, in terms of talking, is probably the social equivalent of a Discord mod. So that's the negative side of it. It's going to be an okay cookout, not a great cookout. We're going to put the Cultist into the C tier. And here we reach the final Terraria boss, who is capable of dooming the planet itself. We have the Moon Lord, where he has the eye hands and can at least wield utensils, but the eye juices or eye boogers might somehow get in the food or on the utensils. So that's kind of a bad thing for the food. I feel like you're going to be kind of gross with the germs and stuff that come out of it. It basically boils down to the following. So if you like seafood, you can enjoy the Moon Lord. Otherwise, you will want to be as far away from the cookout as possible, as the entire place will reek of fish. The Moon Lord would also probably use some gnarly ingredients, such as moon dust, which would spice up the party, if you know what I mean. So with all that being said, it'd be an okay cookout. Again, it kind of boils down to if you like seafood or if you don't like seafood. So we're going to go ahead and throw the Moon Lord all the way into the B tier. So there we have it. We now have the tier list of where I would rank all Terraria bosses on how well they could host a cookout. And that concludes another legendary tier list video. As always, let me stereotype once more and say if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, adios.